Good morning. Happy New Year. It is the new year, and I am excited to begin the new year with you all. I'm excited about the theme that we have. I'm excited to finally get started teaching it and starting to preach on this theme that we've been building up. We've been talking about over the past few weeks. Our Wednesday night, that devotional was all directed toward what we are going to be focused on this year. I'm excited. I hope you're excited, and I think we're going to have a really good year for growth, spiritual growth, and I hope you are excited as I am about it, and some of our teachers are about what we're doing. But all the lessons, Bible class, all the lessons that we teach is going to be sprinkled into some of the sermons. It's all going to be focused on building our faith. And I'm going to try to fix this because it just fell. Anyway, sorry about that. We're focusing on building our faith. All right, we're focusing on building up foundational teachings, going over foundational teachings, going over the foundations of our faith and foundational teachings of what the Bible teaches. We'll be talking about fortifying our faith, kind of building on the foundation that we have. Strengthening those things, edifying us, and then we'll be kind of talking about the fight also. We'll be talking about the spiritual battle, the spiritual warfare, fighting against Satan's tactics, learning about those things. How do we handle that? What can we do? We'll be talking about that. And then kind of toward the end of the year, the theme is forward. So we're moving forward in our faith, forward in our evangelism. And we'll be talking a lot about those types of things. So again, I'm glad and excited that we have a clear direction. We know what we're going to be about for the entire year. And it's nice to have kind of a vision and know where we're going. And again, I think we're going to see a lot of growth this year, spiritually speaking. And I'll just say, I hope you come. All right, I hope you come. I hope you be committed to what we're doing here this year. I hope you come and be here for Bible class, learn, grow closer to one another, grow closer to the Lord. And that's what it's all about anyway. We're trying to grow closer to God as we seek out what we're trying to do. But I do think that we are doing good things. And again, I think if everybody buys into that, this year, I think we're going to have a really good year. But I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. With that out of the way, I don't know if there has ever been a time when the necessity for foundational truths and truths of the Bible and foundational teachings of the faith need to be taught more so than where we are right now. In our current society and our current culture. And it seems like, every year that could probably be said, because every year it seems like more and more where the culture goes, it kind of goes further and further away from God. It gets further and further away from the truth. Truth gets distorted more and more. False teachings continue to be taught more and more. And so the need for foundational teachings of the Bible continues to increase, and naturally so. It continues to increase, and I will say, it's not just the world that needs those foundational teachings. All right, it's not just the world. It's not necessarily something that's only going on in the culture or within other denominational groups. I've also seen and heard, and you have too, that more and more congregations of the Lord's church and even some of our brotherhood institutions departing from foundational teachings of the Bible. I've heard that. I've seen that. It saddens me to think about that, but that's sometimes what happens, and that's what's been going on. And you might not think that going over basic fundamental truths is important, but I'm going to tell you, it is important. It is important. And the moment that we stop going over those, the moment that we quit hearing foundational teaching is when the departure or a departure from the faith can begin to happen. And so this stuff is essential. It's essential. Fundamentals need to be continually reinforced. And if you don't, things can start to crumble. I think I've maybe mentioned this in a Bible class before. Some of you may know this about me, but I've played a lot of baseball in my time. We have some baseball fans in here. But I've played a lot of baseball, and I can't tell you how many times I have taken a round of infield. For those of you that don't know, a round of infield is basically, you get out there on your defensive positions, okay? And I played third base, so I was out there at third base a lot. And, you've got short and second and first. And coach is standing up at home plate, and he's carrying his big, long fungo bat, right? And he hits it down to third base, and, you get several ground balls hit at you or whatever. And you're just making your throws. You're making your throws to first, okay? And then he moves to shortstop. And then so on, and you just make your throws to second. And you go through that, but you go through it a lot. And you may run through it, 2 or 3 times. You do this in practice. You do this before games. But it's a very repetitious thing. In baseball, it's pretty much one of the basic, most fundamental things that you can do defensively. Because it strengthens and it reinforces your entire defensive play. And if you can't get the fundamentals down on fielding a ground ball and making your throws, you're not going to have a defense. You're not going to have a defense. And when you get in a game, plays that should be routine for you to make are not going to be, because you haven't worked on the fundamentals enough. And I would argue that I don't know if you could ever work on the fundamentals enough, because they are the foundation. They are the foundation. They are the base that supports and holds up everything else that you do. I mean, for example, just take the 2024 World Series, for example, with the Yankees and the Dodgers, right? I mean, maybe if the Yankees had just, practiced a little bit more of their fundamentals, they wouldn't have blown a 5-run lead in the 5th. And, maybe they could have fielded a ground ball, and Aaron Judge could have caught a fly ball. But I'm just saying, maybe they wouldn't have blown that. Now listen, I was told to say that. Okay? Somebody in here put me up to that because of some other people in here who might be Yankee fans. Jenny Lou. Anyway, we're going to move on. So, yeah. Had to throw that in there. I was put up to it. But anyway, you get the idea, okay? Fundamentals. I mean, literally, they missed a ground ball. They couldn't field the fly ball. Fundamentals can cost you. Cost them a World Series. And so it is spiritually speaking as well. Okay? If you miss on the fundamentals, if you don't have the right foundation, I'm just going to tell you, it can cost you a lot more than the World Series. It could cost you a lot more than the World Series. It could cost you eternity, ultimately. Okay, and so it is right, it is necessary to periodically reinforce the fundamentals of the faith. Okay, because if you stop that, things begin to fall apart, and things that should be routine, right? Things that should be routine, things that should be a given, that we should understand, they aren't anymore. And the potential to slip into things that are not right increases. That's what can happen. So there is a need for foundational truths, and this morning we just want to go over kind of a few of those and lay some of that groundwork and talk about why the need for a strong foundation. I think when you look into Scripture, you can find plenty of reasons about this as to why it is important to have a strong foundation. All of them are obviously important. We're just going to pull out a few of them this morning. But one reason why the need for a strong foundation is there is because it prevents us from falling. It prevents us from falling. There's a passage that I like to go to and use whenever I talk to, maybe enter into like a marriage counseling, or maybe I talk to somebody or enter into a Bible study with someone, like at the very onset of that Bible study. There's a passage I like to use, and it's in Matthew chapter 7. It's Matthew 7, 24 to 27. It's at the very end of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and him preaching to all of these people. And look what he says. I pull some things out of this to try and apply it, okay? But look what Jesus says. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the rivers came, and the winds blew and fell against that house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. And everyone hearing these words of mine and not doing them may be compared to a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the rivers came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. So Jesus is talking about the right kind of foundation that you need to have. There's a strong foundation, and there is a loose foundation. A strong foundation is the way of wisdom. A loose foundation is the way of folly. And that sounds like a proverb, but I'm not sure that it is. But anyway, it sounds like it. That's what he's saying. But I kind of like to talk about that with people whenever I talk to them about marriage, because a marriage needs to be built on a strong foundation. I like to talk about with somebody who is wanting to become a Christian, because you need to build your faith on the right foundation. And so that's why I pull that out to talk about that. But notice what Jesus says. One man built his house on the rock. The rains descended and rivers came and the winds blew, but that house didn't fall because its foundation had been built on the rock. It was built on something stable. It was built on something immovable. The other man built his house on a weaker foundation. Something that wasn't going to hold up. It was unstable. It was movable. And when the rain descended on his house, and the rivers came and the winds blew and slammed against that house, it fell, and its fall was great. Jesus teaches us about the need for a strong foundation because it prevents us from falling. And he's not talking about building physical houses here. He's talking about building your life on something that's stable, something that's right, something that's true. I mean, before this section, that's where you have, kind of up in the context a little bit, that's where you have Jesus talking about how not everyone is going to enter into heaven. Not everyone who thinks they're doing right is going to enter. It's only going to be the people who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. That's who's going to enter. And then he says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them may be compared to a wise man who built his house on the rock. You see, there's eternal implications here. There's eternal consequences if you don't have a strong foundation. And so, it is our goal this year to reinforce that foundation because we don't want to fall. We don't want to fall. We don't want to be a congregation that falls. We don't ever want to become or be overcome by the rains and swept away by the rivers or blown away by the winds. We want to be a congregation of people with a strong foundation. That's who we want to be. Jesus mentioned winds there. The winds blowing. There was another man that talked about winds. His name was the Apostle Paul. That wasn't officially his name. That's what we call him. Paul talked about winds, right? And it had to do with doctrines, actually. In Ephesians chapter 4, when he talks about saints getting equipped for the work of service, and he talks about building up the body and attaining the unity of the faith and the full knowledge of the Son of God, he says all that is necessary. But he says in verse 14, he gives the reason why. All that's necessary. Why? So that we are no longer to be children, tossed here and there by waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, and by craftiness in deceitful scheming. You see, having a firm foundation also helps with that. It's almost like a preventative. Okay? And when we're built up as a body into who we need to be, when our foundation is strong, it can prevent us from being carried about by every wind of doctrine that comes along. It prevents us from being tricked. It prevents us from maybe giving credence to another doctrine that's not right, or maybe it'll help us identify if there's some sort of slant toward a teaching or a doctrine that we are familiar with. But if our foundation is weak, if it has cracks, if it's loose like sand, well, that's when things have the potential to start to come in. It has the potential to break and crumble. So building and having a strong foundation is a preventative measure. So when we talk about things like the makeup of the church, or when we talk about the organization of the church, when we talk about leadership, or when we talk about certain teachings like the authority of Scripture, like what we talked about in our Adult 2 class this morning with Trey, when we talk about how we should approach God because of who He is, when we talk about sin, when we talk about the gospel and faith and baptism and Christian living and judgment and the Holy Spirit and kind of all of these core teachings, these core doctrines, what we are doing is anchoring ourselves. We're grounding ourselves down so that we will not be moved and we will not fall. A strong foundation prevents us from falling. We also can see that having a strong foundation, it holds up the truth. It holds up the truth. When Paul wrote to Timothy in his first letter, 1 Timothy chapter 3, you get to verses 14 and 15, and Paul says this. He says, I write these things hoping to come to you soon. He says, but in case I'm delayed, I write so that you will know how one ought to conduct himself in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and support of the truth. This household of God, the church of the living God, which is what we are here. We are supposed to be a pillar. And this is what you can think about. Something like this, when you think about what the church is supposed to be. The church is supposed to be a pillar. And you think about what a pillar does. A pillar, it holds something up. It supports something great. It's strong. It's fixed. It's anchored. We are to be the pillar. We are to be the support. The NIV, or even the very word support actually does mean here. It means a base for something. It's a support. It's a mainstay. And the NIV actually uses the word foundation here, the pillar and foundation. As God's household, we are to be both of those things. As God's household, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. A responsibility to be, look at this here, isn't AI awesome? A responsibility to be up under the truth, pressing it up, holding it up, supporting it. It's a big responsibility, but a responsibility that we have, and that's who God expects us to be. That's what His house is supposed to be about. His house is supposed to support His truth. It's supposed to support the truth. And look, there are other households out there. There are other people that are upholding and being the pillars in support of other truths and their truth. And we're supposed to be, though, the pillar in support of the truth. And listen, there's only one. There's only one truth the Bible speaks about. And it's not a pillar in support of some of the truth or the foundation for part of the truth or truths that we like or only the truths that people want to hear. No, we have a responsibility to uphold all of it. Every single bit of it. That's our job as God's house. You can't pick and choose. You can't pick and choose which truths you want to uphold and which ones you don't. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so, that's not what we're going to be about. That's not what I'm going to be about. Okay? So, who we want to continue to be this next year is the pillar in support of the truth in our community. That's who we want to continue to be. And I know that there are other things that we're going to do to be a light in our community and different benevolence things and ways that we can serve our community. But I don't know if there is a way that we could serve our community better other than being the pillar in support of the truth in our community around the people with the people that live here right around us. I don't know if there's any better way that we could serve those people. There is no better way. There's no better way that you could serve someone else than giving them and being the resource for the truth. That's what we want to be about. But we need a strong foundation in order to do so. We need a strong foundation because it prevents us from falling. It holds up the truth, and we've got to be solid on the fundamental teachings of the Bible. Okay. I think probably one of the most important reasons as for the need for a strong foundation is this, because it will build generational faith. It'll build generational faith. I don't know what heading you have in your Bible at Psalm 78, but in my Bible it reads that the generation to come might know. Psalm 78. And I want to pull just a few things out of this. Just pay attention to the language. In Psalm 78, just verses 1 through 8, it's a psalm of Asaph. Look what he says. And I think we can kind of apply this a little bit. The psalmist says, "Give ear, O my people." Hope you can read that. "Give ear, O my people, to my instruction. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will pour forth dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have recounted to us. We will not conceal them from their children, but recount to the generation to come the praises of Yahweh and His strength and His wondrous deeds that He has done. For He established a testimony in Jacob and set a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers that they should teach them to their children, that the generation to come might know, even their children, even the children yet to be born, that they may arise and recount them to their children, that they should set their confidence in God and not forget the deeds of God, but observe His commandments, and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not prepare its heart, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. The psalmist clearly talks about recounting the praises of God, His strength, His wondrous deeds that He has done, down to the next generation. Passing things down was something that God wanted so that He would not be forgotten, and the things that He did for them would not be forgotten. The books of Exodus and Deuteronomy actually record times where God instructed the people to tell their sons about things that happened and the things that God had done for the people. Tell them about those things. Tell them, reinforce that idea so that they won't forget me, that they will remember all of these things. Tell them what happened when I brought you out of Egypt. Let them know. Pass that down. And so the foundation that we have, the foundation that we build on now and today, look, it's not just for us in the here and now. It isn't just for us adults. It's also for those who are going to come after us. And we need to understand that. Okay, and we've got to think about, okay, what kind of foundation are we going to leave the generations that are coming behind us? There's a generation coming. What kind of foundation are we going to leave them? Will it be strong? Will it be a strong foundation? Will it be one that has been worked on and reinforced, preached about, taught about? Are we going to leave them something to live in, so to speak, or are we going to kind of just leave them a shack to live in? I think we're familiar with the idea of an inheritance. There's a lot of people that have plans for their family and their family members, their loved ones. Sometimes when the parents of children get older, they want to try and make sure that things are kind of well established and taken care of before they're gone. They want to make sure that things are all good with their property or the house that they live in. If there's money involved, they want to make sure they set up things financially and make sure the money is all going to the right people or the right places, whatever. But they're just trying to make sure that everything is good and in place before they're gone, so that everything is good to go for their children to inherit. And that's the idea. That's the idea here. What kind of inheritance, what kind of foundation do you want to leave the coming generation? What kind of position do you want to leave the church in before you go? We want the church to be strong. We want the church to be strong for a long time. Continue to be. I want the church to be strong and thriving and still holding to the truth, even when my children, get to where I'm at now. And Lord willing, if there's grandkids involved, I want the church, even way down the line, to still be strong and thriving and just staying at it, even then. I want the church to have a rock solid foundation. I want the church to be strong forever. We should all want that. We should all want that, shouldn't we? So if that's what we want, there's a need then to make sure that we build and reinforce a strong foundation today for the generations tomorrow. Having a strong foundation can build generational faith. We pass it down. That's the idea. Look, as I said, I am looking forward to a great year. A great year with all of you. I'm looking forward to learning a lot and learning alongside you, but everything starts with a strong foundation. And ultimately, the foundation that we have is Jesus Christ. It is Jesus. He is the cornerstone. I mean, that's how he's talked about in the New Testament, the cornerstone. He's the reason for it all. And none of this works if He is not our foundation. And truthfully, without Him, we are nothing. Without Him, you are nothing. Without Him, I am nothing. I am nothing without Christ in my life. I'm nothing without Him as my foundation. And in the end, if I don't have Him, I'm not going to have anything. I'm not going to have anything if I don't have Christ as my foundation now and today. And so, if you're interested or you need help with anything, if you want Jesus to be the foundation of your life, if you're convicted by that, if that's what you want, I really hope that you will make that happen. I really hope you'll make it happen. And you can let people know. You can let us know. Let's go talk about those things. Look, the invitation's still there. The invitation for you to come into a relationship with Jesus, make Him Lord of your life, make Him the foundation of your life. You can do that today. And if you need to let us know, you can do it right now as we stand and sing.